You're good.
Okay. I see. All right, I see it's 3:30, so we will call this special meeting of the Solid Waste Management Authority of the City of Crescent City and the County of Del Norte as now meeting in special session. Only those items that indicate a specific time will be heard at this time. All items will be, and we only have one item, will be taken out of context to accommodate public and staff availability and won't apply today. So I will call the meeting to order and we'll do a pledge of allegiance first. And County Council Martha Rice, would you please lead us in the pledge? Thank you, Mary.
Ready, salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, just as a forewarning, we have, not that it's going to be a problem today with just a few people here, we have very poor acoustics here in this room. We do not have a sound system, a microphone system available, so I'll ask all commissioners to please speak up for the benefit of those who are watching on television, and that we have the room on as much quiet as possible, rustling the papers, anything like that, which can interfere with the audio. So we will first move to public comments. Any member of the public may address the Solid Waste Management Authority on any matter on or off the agenda. After receiving recognition by the chair, please give your name and address for the record. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes. Do we have anyone in the audience who wishes to address our board in public comments? Mr. Lonsdale, would you please come up? And we have a 3-minute limit, which I think is going to be fairly flexible today, so
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, my name is Bill Lonsdale and I live in Crescent City. I have an inquiry as to the current status of the final report from R3 and when it will be available for the public to review. Thank you.
I'll address that in just a moment. Are there any other comments from the audience, public, at this time? Thank you, Mr. Lonsdale, for bringing that to our attention. I called R3 Consultants last night with this very same question. They are awaiting additional comments from one commissioner who is not here, Commissioner Sullivan, and I'm understanding those are forthcoming, and upon receipt of those comments, the report will become public. So that is our timetable, and I'm told that will be forthwith.
Thank you.
Very good. All right, so the general solid waste matter we'll be addressing tonight, this afternoon, is discussion and possible action regarding proposed budget for fiscal year 2014-2015 and schedule a public hearing for June 11th for final adoption. Ted, if you would, please.
Sure. Thank you, Chair Gillen. So in order to provide a context for the drafting of this budget, I did provide a status report on our current budget for the current fiscal year. And it's worth noting that while there were some reduced expenses associated with payroll for the time that the director who was retired was available, those monies have been transferred and used for covering increased expenses for professional services, including those of our treasurer, those of our legal counsel, and professional expenses associated with the landfill. For the status quo budget, which is for your consideration this morning or this afternoon, I continued the existing staffing chart and those existing staffing expenses as projected by the auditor. And with the same premise that should this current staffing situation continue, that would avail additional resources to address the additional cost of doing the business that the authority has to do. So the budget before you will not be finally adopted by yourselves today, but will be approved for presentation or written comments, possibly from the city and the county separately. Hopefully, those will occur on May 19th and 20th, and I've sent emails requesting that to the city and the county. I haven't received a word back.
Ted, may I interrupt you just for a moment? The May 20th date in question, if you're looking at our Board of Supervisors meeting, is the second and fourth Tuesdays. That would be May 27th.
Oh, okay.
So I want to make sure that the public is aware that the Board of Supervisors is not regularly meeting on the 20th, that being the third Tuesday of the month. Just having checked my calendar, it would be May 27th, and I'm presuming the city council date, May 19th, that is the third Monday.
That's correct. That would be the only, that would be the only other one.
Okay.
That's
Apologies for interruptions.
No, that's absolutely appropriate. My intent, of course, is that those be presented to the city council and board of supervisors, so that any written comments might be able to be addressed before presentation to the authority board. Once again, on our regular meeting on June 11th. At that time, we'll look for adoption of the final budget. So this is really a time to get a better understanding of what our projections are and what we anticipate for the coming year. So in terms of projected expenses, a number of expenses are projected by the county auditor's office, and we've incorporated those projections within this budget. And additionally, there are some changes that are going on at the landfill, some of which you're aware of, in that we do have the waste discharge requirements fee, of which we have more than 50% outstanding in this fiscal year. And it seems, since the Regional Water Quality Control Board has not yet approved us to be in a lower tier, the appropriate thing was to budget for the 1A threat and complexity rating, so we currently sit. So that's a big chunk of cash. And hopefully, we still intend to pursue this on appeal, and our intent is to try to lower that rating, but it's a bit of a gamble. We can't prejudice what the data may be. We have to do the investigation, see what the data is, and see what the determination is based on the data. So that's where we're at currently with that. In addition, the Crescent City landfill is due for what's known as the constituent of concern monitoring. This is a considerably more comprehensive water quality monitoring that we have to do every 5 years. And we're still on the same schedule in terms of going out there and gathering the samples, but the reality is that every 5 years we have to sample for a much broader suite of constituents looking for potential impacts associated with the landfill. And we have to do this every 5 years. So our water testing costs next year will be significantly more than they have been this past year. In terms of revenue projections, we did base the revenue projections based on what we're seeing this year and what we've seen as general trends. We're looking at potentially a slight reduction in revenues, but it's not that significant. Probably the bigger significant reduction in revenues is associated with not budgeting a grant from the Department of Conservation Division of Recycling. This is a $15,000 block grant that the authority regularly does obtain when that program exists, but at least the draft budget for the state of California had talked about not having that program continue, so the prudent thing seemed to be not budget that as potential income, but to include those budget lines. So if that program is established and is continued, then we already have the budget lines in place to pursue those grants. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Commissioners? Any questions on Ted Ward's report on the budget?
Bottom line, though, is this is a balanced budget, and it is a slightly reduced budget in terms of the overall both revenues and expenses for the coming fiscal year, but it is balanced.
I sent along some questions, Ted, and I know you weren't able to open up one of the attachments that both you and Rich were you going to address some of the questions that I sent along? Or
I couldn't open any of the attachments.
Either one?
None of them. And I did send you an email accordingly, and you had asked that I separate out some grants, and I sent you an email doing just that.
Just Microsoft Word? Tom?
I was able to open up one of the documents, and there were some questions having to do with some slight discrepancies between the county auditor's report and your report.
The outside auditor?
The outside auditors, the outside auditors. So there was one question on revenues. If I may
Yeah, go ahead.
go ahead and interrupt you, Commissioner Wilson. The county auditors show $2,849,534. The outside auditors show a figure slightly higher than that, $45,000 change. I know these are small numbers, but then again, they should have some justification.
45,000.
45, well, I guess on an overall scheme, it is a small number, but it is one that needs to be addressed. When we're repeating numbers with the viewing public, I want everyone to understand that out of an almost $3 million budget, there was a difference of $45,800 about that. That was one question on revenues. Yes, okay. Now, if we, yes, Mary, go ahead first, then I'll recognize.
So some of my questions,
Treasurer.
Rich did get, I passed those off, and so he was able to track down the revenue one, which was something that had not quite been posted yet at our county auditors.
The adjusting journal entries from the outside auditors.
You know what, Rich, and I'll have you come up to so that we get the full impact of the audio. We don't have microphone system here, so.
Last Friday, 3:30, 4 o'clock, Mary texted me, and anyhow, I had her fax me these questions. She had gone through it and found differences, and I couldn't look at it that time. I had some company, but I looked at it Sunday, and I said, I'll bet you this is adjusting journal entries the outside auditor does, the county auditor hasn't done yet. So I emailed her back and said I'd check on it Monday. I met with Clint, and we went through it, and we found the revenue within $100 or so of that 45.6 or 46.5.
45.8.
Yeah, and we were very close to that, and Clint and I both agreed it was some entries from the prior year hadn't been reversed, and then the accruals from this year. And I didn't go any farther than that on that sheet. She had found, I think, depreciation and
Right.
payment on the note payment to the iBank, and I think, so there were some questions about expenses. I didn't get into all those, because basically what happened was the county auditor didn't have the adjusting interest from the outside auditor.
There was a difference of $74,000, approximately, a little more, on salaries. Were you able to address that? The county auditors versus the outside auditors?
We started to get into that, and it could have taken quite a while, but we were kind of thinking OPEB wasn't in there, and that was $50-some thousand that the outside auditor would throw into payrolls and benefits, but we didn't nail that one down.
Okay. Other commissioners, do you have any comments or questions from Mr. Taylor or Mr. Ward on either these discrepancies or the budget in general?
No, just when I look at a budget like this, I look at the big changes, the increases and decreases that aren't $100 or $200 or even $500, but we have some pretty significant ones.
Yeah.
We have line 20151, which is, we've apparently continued that decision not to obtain liability insurance.
I'm really glad that you point that out, yes.
I think we need to throw that out in the open and acknowledge it.
Yeah. Similarly, that we're also, this budget also essentially omits, based on prior discussions from this board, membership with the Environmental Services JPA, Regional Council of Rural Counties. So that's $6,000 in membership expenses that aren't added. While it may seem like just membership, I can tell you that will have an impact in addition to the money saved. For instance, there was a recent question related to hazardous waste, and one of the things I regularly do is I'll communicate with an expert in the field, Larry Sweetser, who works for the ESJPA. And so without that $6,000, that's one more phone call for expertise assistance that I won't have available to me or to the agency.
Yeah, those are the two that I had circled, actually. But
Right,
just for the record, Mary and I did meet with Ted
right.
last week
Yeah, so
for
we,
a couple hours, so we have a little bit of a head start on the rest of the commission, just, so that was helpful. Thank
and
you.
we, for the public to know, we did go through each line, except for salaries. That was not discussed at all. And the original budget that you received is different than the one that Mr. Ward had sent us later after our initial meeting. It's $23,000 less because I had pulled out some of the old grant data that inflated the budget, so it was pulled out of both sides. And also, the revenues that are down, basically, in total, is about $36,000. And what Mr. Ward did was to look at where the revenues are actually right now and how they'll probably finish up. So again, that's a $36,000 decrease there. And what was noted during our meeting is that the tonnage is down approximately 3.6%. And the franchise fees, though, are down over 6%, so that's twice as much. So the franchise fees were down 6.5% for the year. So that's, again, that 10% fee that is for the services that Recology offer. So that was down. Yet the expenses were up, and Mr. Ward was talking about the suite of tests that's going to need to be done this 5 years. That's going to cost an additional $30,000.
And I just got more recent cost estimates on that, and I may have underestimated the additional expenses associated with that. I had preliminary estimates, and estimates get more accurate as time goes on, but unfortunately they've gone in the wrong direction. But looking at other numbers, I believe we'll be able to address that once we get the final numbers. One other thing that is worth noting, the external audit that Mr. Taylor referred to, that we'll be discussing at the next regular authority meeting, or the next special authority meeting, does recommend that the authority increase rates to address a number of areas that they consider to be shortfalls, such as funding the other post-employment benefits and establishing additional resources for catastrophic circumstances, potentially at the landfill. This budget does not anticipate any rate increase other than those required under our agreements for the franchise collections and the transfer station operations. So this is not adhering to the recommendation of the external auditor that we increase rates.
And that was very interesting. In fact, Mr. Taylor has been working on that this year. There's a new law that's gone in that because of all of the unfunded liabilities, now there's something that is required of agencies that they have got to figure out what they actually owe if people were to retire, what's expected down the road. And so this agency has an obligation of, it's the net OPEB, I don't know, it's almost $54,000, but yet are only putting in $11,000. So if the obligation were met, it would be, the outside auditor is recommending the entire amount, so of the $54,000.
Yeah, but I think, just to add some light to that, about 3 or 4 years ago, all counties and cities got hit out of the blue with this massive funding. And even the county locally, we didn't have the resources to 100% fund what they're projecting, but what they're saying, their projections are saying it's 100% worst case, you got to fund every dollar, and that's not realistic. Exactly, so what the county did is I believe we funded half, and I'd have to, it's been a little while since we did it, but I think every government agency, very few funded 100% of this thing. It was just the figures, it would have been too much of a hit to all these institutions to do it. So I think it's been going on for three years now that this OPEB has been a requirement.
What I was told at the meeting was that this $11,000, which is, less than about 20% of the $54,000, is the same percentage that the county is funding their long-term liability. And the problem with this body funding the entire amount into there, so if the solid waste funded everything, but yet the county didn't, and if monies were needed in the county, would it be there for the solid waste employees? So that was an issue. So they were funding, because the big guy is only funding at a certain percentage, that was how the 11,000 was figured, is that?
That, and I think what was overwrapped was revenues and expenses in the last budget. I think that was a combination of not funding at all, and this is what we're projecting the revenue, and we're projecting the expenses, so this is how we've got to contribute.
Ted, when was the last time we had a general rate increase?
It would have been associated about the same time as the new franchise collection program went into effect, so that would have been effective July 1st, 2011.
So we're coming up to July of 2014, where the rates have been static since that time.
Well, it's static within limits, in that there are in our agreements with the collections contractor, Ecology Development, and our transfer station operations contractor, Andrew Waste Solutions Group.
So
There
there
are
have been
provisions
elevators
in there that they get a percentage of the increase in the consumer price index, which is the standard way of measuring inflation. So they don't quite get the full increase based on inflation. But one of the things that this allows is that it allows people to have fairly predictable garbage rates. They're not big jumps. The downside to it is that things are held pretty steady. And then when you go to a completely new service, as we did in July 2011, some people suffered sticker shock, and that it was a very different service. We have a much more comprehensive recycling program, but some of the rates did go up a good amount. So that is part of the downside. But should this board direct us to develop rates that would increase revenues per the recommendation of the external auditor, I'd be happy to work along those lines. But since I did not have direction from the board to do that, my general sense of the disposition of the board is to try to control rates as much as possible. That was what I drafted in the budget.
What do you attribute the decrease in tonnage?
It's not a significant decrease in tonnage. The tonnage through the transfer station will have something to do with the rate of recycling, but honestly it has a lot more to do with how the construction trades are doing. The new construction and the remodeling are major impacts. Also, roofing and those kinds of activities are also significant portions of our budget. Also, depending upon how things happen, there was the tsunami that was unexpected but ended up bringing more tonnage through. So anytime you're within about 5%, from my view as a solid waste professional, that's roughly steady tonnage. And you'll get some noise, some fluctuation along the top end there. But I'm not seeing a real strong trend increasing or decreasing over the last, since 2011.
It looks like about 700 tons from 2012 down to 2013, and then 600 tons again. So 2011 was big because there was 1,200 pounds of tsunami debris, or 1,200 tons. So like I said, I don't know. I averaged out that it would be about 20,600 tons over the course of 5 years. It would be an average of the 5 years, taking out the tsunami. And right now we're at 20,039. So I see we're off about 600 tons below average.
Okay. Can I follow up on a question? The post-employment benefits line, the one that we're basically underfunding, I know there's risk to us financially, but is there any other sanction? Is there can the state come in
I
and?
think we've gone through this the last 2 or 3 years, and it's, what I've gleaned off of it was, you need to have a plan and try and fund this. I don't know if there's any other sanctions other than.
That's all I wanted to know is.
In terms of
penalties or
what I would like to do, is try to work with the county auditor on this. I think it would be useful to have this agency have a separate budget line and have our OPEB set aside be separate from the county. that makes a lot of sense to me. That's not currently the status, but I'd like to work with the county auditor to do that.
What's the board's pleasure on moving toward reevaluating that?
But it'd be nice to kind of set a percentage, to have a goal to work towards. I mean, it is a long-term debt. You said the county is going with 50%?
No, that was 3 or 4 years ago. I couldn't give you an accurate number. I know we did not fund 100% of it, so I'm not going to put a figure out there, and I'd be off if I gave you the correct number on that. But the number I'd be guessing.
We could set a goal, though, to work towards maybe 50%. That seems reasonable to get started, don't you think?
Well, it depends. Are we running a reserve in our budget, or are we running a net deficit in our budget? Because I don't know where you come up from the funds
Yeah.
to fund that, if that's the case, without
I
increasing.
believe that was
Making
part of
some
the
cuts.
basis of the external auditor's recommendation that we increase rates, and that were we to increase rates so that we could fund that more fully, then, or more specifically, were we to try to fund that more fully, it would be a significant support for the argument that we need to increase rates.
So on payroll, it's the same payroll we've had from last year, but we have one less person now.
Well, the director position is currently vacant. One of the savings is that the director position, I believe, was budgeted from, the step that the former director was at is now dropped to a step A. So that's one of the significant reductions. in pay.
That's the $20,000 difference.
Commissioners, would you like to review for a future agenda the idea of the rate reevaluation based on funding the OPEB? Or is that something that's premature?
I think we could go forward with this as a budget, but it'd be nice to give Ted the direction to work with the county to see if we can separate out our
Well,
development.
Yes,
And then we can, we have a place.
oh,
for
I
it
see,
to
one step
go.
at a time is what
Yeah.
I'm.
Okay, do we have a consensus on instructing Ted to do exactly
So
that?
let me see if I understand. We're separating out, we're going to have a separate accounting for our post-employment benefits than what the county's got.
From the rest of the county employees, that would be correct. That would be.
So why don't we just separate everything out and, let's.
Well, mostly it is. For instance, the 4224, overall, this budget is 422421, which is a separate category for all of these budget lines from the rest of the county.
So does solid waste right now fund 100% of PERS for employees that exceed 5 years here? Do the employees contribute any, or is it just all 100% on solid waste?
I don't immediately know the answer.
Because I know at the county, it's 100% county. It's after you work for the county for 5 years, it's 100% county.
Taylor, do you know?
Doing some
Rich Taylor?
Mr. Hendricks' jobs, I did a compensation report. And there's 3 different categories, and some people have been funded 100%, I believe.
Some?
Yes, and the newer employees are less, and newer employees are less.
Well, the Pension Reform Act has a new thing that's being instituted and it's being transitioned in, but prior to the county policies, if you work for, you match what the county did for the first 5 years, and after 5 years, the county funded 100% of your PERS. And that was a deal negotiated
There's
years
definitely
ago.
different percentages on different employees.
Why do we have,
The other
Well, we
issue
call it
that's relevant here is.
Yeah, hold, because of the IT and so I'm going to ask one person to speak at a time because we don't have a sound system in here. So, Rich, please finish your comment, and then Ted, if you would.
In doing the compensation report, which is the first time I've ever looked at who makes what, there were different tiers in retirement. And some people were more, because they were being paid a higher percent of PERS in compensation reports than other people. Without, having it in front of me, I think it had to do with the number of years they've been around. Something like you were hired under one policy and this came about, the changes and the new people were hired under different policies. But Ed probably knows more about that than I do.
Well, that's exactly what I was going to speak to, is that my understanding is that this PERS balance of payments, in terms of what comes from an employer and what comes from an employee, was one of the things that was negotiated as part of the new agreement with the county. And at this point in time, the solid waste authority union is still following the old agreement because that had not been updated or revised in the same way that the county employment agreement has. So that might also have bearing on it.
So we're still on the old system, 100% funded by the old.
That's correct, but I believe it's, of course, it doesn't apply the same way to temporary employees.
Yeah. So we are funding 100%.
Yeah, as I said, I'm not in favor of that at all for public employees. I feel they should pay a percentage.
Well, but there's the state law, PEFRA, was the Public Employee Reform Act, and it basically phased in by, I think, 2019. There has to be a shared cost going forward. I don't have the exact statistics. Anyway, it's state law, so it's just a question, like Ted said, under negotiation.
Well, it would appear that there's a lot that is unknown, so at this time, I think, rather than take any action or direction at this time, I think we need to get our facts clear. So I'm gonna hold off on any movement on that motion to direct Ted in a certain area until Commissioner Holly, you and I meet for our pre-agenda meeting in the next go-around. This is about the budget now rather than discussing ancillary issues. So is everyone all right with holding off on
Yeah, that's
making
fine.
any movement at this meeting today? We'll discuss it at another meeting, at our pre-agenda meeting, to discuss the direction we want to go in and agendize it appropriately.
Yeah, I'd like to talk about the changes in expenses, salaries, of course, and benefits. So your opinion is the $74,000 difference is between the outside auditor and the county auditor is the $54,000 for the OPEB minus the $11,000 would be $42,000.
Well, that's the first thing Clint and I came up with, but we didn't track that one down because Clint hadn't seen the adjusted increase yet. So he thought maybe we'd make those to his and then we'd compare.
I would
There were
probably,
pages of them.
that seems reasonable to me. But that still leaves a difference of $42,000 between the outside auditor and the county auditors. What they're saying
I know
the
some of
salaries
those,
and benefits are, and that's off the end of the year report from the county auditor.
I know there was an accrual of payroll too, but I think that was only about, I'm trying to remember, $10,000. Salaries payable.
So there's still, so that would be, again, so I've got $42,000 difference there. And then as far as expenses, it was a little bit difficult to go through because, again, I had done the comparison of the 5 years, and we had some questions because the figures that I had were not looking like they matched up with the county, and so I went back and compared the end of the year county auditors figures with the end of the year outside auditors figures, and so then I came up with some differences in here and was able to kind of track it back to my 5-year, the matrix that I did. And so I pulled out some of the expenses because in government, it looks like depreciation is considered an expense.
Both government and private enterprise.
Well, I had not written in, so I ended up with a difference of about $17,000 when I added in the depreciation. So I don't know how to go through all these numbers in this public meeting really right now. As far as, I had a difference of Hambro payments of $6,300.
Easy to see the difference between cash basis and accrual basis. But we didn't, when we saw the revenue, and it came out and we said, oh, this is what it is, so I assume that, and Clint will make the adjustments to the June 30th statement, and I think you'll be much closer to that. There were some pages of adjustments.
So the ones I had, my all other expenses, it shows here there's $41,365, and I came up with a different figure, so Ambrose, you're saying might be for accrual. So when I go through just my difference of expenses, again, the revenue, I feel that's taken care of, but I have a difference of $41,000 between the outside auditor and the county auditor for expenses. So I couldn't figure it out. You know, I see the way that they, I was hoping you had a chance to go through my figures to kind of give me an idea
Always
of,
conscious
I noticed
of
that.
the money that's being spent when I do these things. I spend lots of time, or I can just wait till the county auditor makes the adjustments and then see how close we are.
Mhm.
So that's what I decided to do.
So in all, I kind of worked my way back to, again, the analysis that I had done previously, and you know, I just show that, you know, it would be, I showed a loss for the year. And, you know, part of it, again, I don't know if there's of $27,000, and where I have this difference in expenses there that. So, to me, it seems as if we need to cut the budget, and again, you know, it's hard to talk about numbers in these meetings, but I went through my chart, and I took the outside auditors and the county auditors, and I worked those together, and then I worked it back to my figures. And I have my questions. I had the one resolved on the revenue, but I still do not have the one resolved on expenses. And from what I see, I still feel pretty comfortable with my analysis that, you know, it shows a loss for the year. And you're saying that there's not a loss for the year.
That's not what I'm seeing at this time.
What are you saying?
That's not what I am seeing at this time. I'm not seeing that we are at a loss at this time.
I took out all of the, I didn't get, unfortunately, I took out all of the grants, because typically when you do revenue and expense, it's difficult to have grants in there, because some of the grants you get paid for up front, some of them on the back end, and when I was kind of going through this from year to year, it was very difficult. So I had taken out the grants, and then I had added them back in at the end.
That may be part of the issue, because the grants that we receive, some of those funds go to pay salaries, but not all of them. A good portion goes to either advertising expenses or publication expenses, printing expenses, etc. But there is revenue in there to help pay salaries, but that is not a separate salaries line. We don't have a salaries paid by grants line. It just goes into the salaries line. So that if you pull out all of the grants, part of what you'll be doing is you'll end up having a net deficit because those funds have been taken out.
Yeah, so I only have the $30,000 for the year ended 2013 in grants. So,
Well, just two things I have. One is I would like a breakdown. Kevin had given me one a few years ago, a breakdown on the payrolls exactly, because I'd like to know right now, we're obviously with you fulfilling the role of the acting director, there's a savings to the authority right now. So what?
Well, that's not exactly true in that while there is a savings in that we're not paying both a director and a program manager at the same time.
For the benefits.
Right, but there are additional expenses. Mr. Taylor is doing a lot of work that otherwise would have been done by one of those parties, and similarly, Bryce is doing a bunch of work that would have been done by some of those parties. Similarly, we're also paying the clerk for some of those duties that were done by some of those parties. So there are increases in expenses even though there are reduced actual staff expenses.
So that's kind of why I'd like a breakdown of it. I mean, that's something that Kevin was able to provide for me a few years ago. It wouldn't be that hard. You don't have to attach names, but position and break down
Absolutely.
accordingly, and plus the additional costs of, you know, treasurer and clerk and all that stuff. And then that gives a true indication of, you know, if we're running right now, obviously, we are not gonna probably, well, I'm not gonna say the way we are forever. It'd be nice to know where we're at financially. Second thing, I think is just more of a matter of semantics, but I'd like to remove line 20,291, commissioner expense. There is none, I don't think we need that line there anymore. That was removed when the JP was amended. There's no point, that's,
It's possible that the downside of, first of all, of course, we could do that. Second of all, the downside of removing a budget line completely from the budget is then it's not accessible in any way. Creating a new budget line mid-year apparently is no small challenge according to the auditor. And should the commissioners have any expense that they would like reimbursed by the authority, that would be the line for it. So eliminating that line also functionally virtually eliminates the
so
possibility.
we don't have, it seems to me like it fit under one of these travel line items. What, I mean, what expense would the commissioners have outside of what, I don't think, besides the stipend that was paid, I don't think there really was an expense.
Typically, there haven't been.
Yeah, I don't think it's really ever been used, but commissioners are eligible to be reimbursed for approved, whether it's an activity or travel, something the board wants a commissioner to participate in and is willing to pay for. It hasn't been used, it's possible.
But it hasn't, there's no
It's
history,
desirable in the
there's no history of it being used that I see on
Not
this
in the
budget,
last
or
fiscal
past budget, or when was the last time, let me ask you this way, when was this item 291 utilized as commissioner expense? In your memory, do you ever recall it being utilized?
There was a period of time, but Mr. Sullivan is very aware, that commissioners were receiving a regular stipend for attending the meetings and doing their due diligence as commissioners. The other time that I recall this has been used is to reimburse. There have been times when commissioners have gone to, say, speak to the Regional Water Quality Control Board at their meeting in Santa Rosa, and that would be a circumstance where they would be incurring reimbursable expenses.
Okay, the stipends, we all know about the stipends, they've been discontinued, and I doubt that they'll see the light of day at any time in the near future. As far as other expenses, I'd like to know what circumstances under which any of our commissioners would be going to such a meeting, as you're mentioning in Santa Rosa, in an official capacity as a commissioner. They might go as a city council person or a board supervisor, but I'm wondering if it's, I would have to agree with Commissioner Sullivan that it's kind of an obsolete item.
I have no problem removing it, but as I said, we are continuing our appeal for the waste discharge requirements fee. And in my mind, really the only circumstance that I can imagine for a reimbursable expense would be having a commissioner or the chair.
You do have a travel line item here, though. On the previous one, so the commissioner could be reimbursed on travel. That's 2,290.
075.
I'm not aware of a prohibition of that, but again, if you'd like to remove the line item,
All right, is there consensus on removing item line number 20,291?
Yeah.
Do we have a consensus of our?
Can I ask one more quick question?
Sure.
In that line item, if the commissioners were to go to a training of some kind, and we paid for a trainer, where would that be a part of that line item? Would that be, is there a training line item somewhere where that would be charged? I mean, I don't know that that's, we have trainings pretty frequently at the city, and I can.
Let me just interrupt just for a second, Commissioner Ali. I'm rather than talk about the exigence, the what if, we don't have any history of it, and this, to my knowledge, of this. If you're going as a city of Crescent City council member or board or supervisor, there is funding for that. But unless there's been any history other than stipends, then this is this is a line item which is it's obsolete.
What about our at-large member? She's not a member of the board of supervisors or the city.
Well, shouldn't get a sent an email.
I know, but
You do have travel, and you've also got special department expense, the 2,500, what's that set aside for, Ted? Ted, on the special department expense, what's that for, the 2,500?
The special department expenses usually for material expenses specific to our department, say testing equipment used at the landfill, for example, that isn't directly related to post-closure maintenance, small equipment. In terms of grants, special department expenses are used for, say, purchasing drain containers for promoting used oil recycling.
The oil recycling actually is, because I sent you an email on that, but would like to review that. That's, what line item is that on oil recycling? That's a moneymaker. Recycling of oil, there's a,
You also have the contingency budget, it's there.
okay,
Where is that? Either way, it's covered. I don't think that needs to be a commission expense.
Yeah, I don't,
Okay.
we can take it out and put it back in if we needed it, just.
Not, like I said, my understanding is that it's, right now, the budget for this line item is 0. The only purpose of it is a placeholder, should there be some action by the board. If the board chooses to eliminate this line item, I don't have a problem with that at all.
I'd like to review the liability insurance line item, and I'd like you to help refresh my memory, 2151. This board had looked into possibility of getting some kind of insurance, and we found that, first of all, there's never been a claim that we could find in any recent governance anywhere that there'd been a claim about a leaking landfill, and we couldn't find any. Now, if someone is out there in an official capacity and trips and falls and injures themselves, we do have insurance for that purpose. We do not have insurance for the leaking, for the possibility of a leaking landfill. That was what this board thoroughly vetted and found that there was no claims, and we didn't think that there was any reason to move forward on that because of the level of liability, the deductible, excuse me. So I know we discussed that sometime during calendar year 2013, and
I think the group was gonna come back, and wasn't Bill gonna, I thought Cochran was here and he was gonna meet with some people after that meeting to discuss, wasn't that? That's what came.
well, we had a presentation
Yeah.
from an insurance person.
Yeah.
And I remember clearly that it didn't cover our needs. It was kind of, to my knowledge, was a waste of money. And
I
it seemed to.
think, in general, your recollection of the events is mine as well. There is, to be fair, as we discuss the external audit at the next authority meeting, one of their comments is the continuation of the comment that they do recommend that there be landfill liability insurance. I can understand from their perspective as an outside auditor, this is clearly a liability associated with the agency, that they would make such a recommendation. But also I understand that part of the presumption of such a recommendation is that the liability insurance would actually cover the liabilities associated with the landfill. And that's where our investigation about the policy is really sort of separated from the assumptions that we all had about the liability would actually cover your liabilities. It seemed that in most cases, most of the things that would be actual expenses to this agency associated with the landfill would almost never be covered by such policies. And so the only thing that would be truly certain about having such a policy is the regular payment that you would have to make.
Well, that's true. And I do recall our meeting with our Trinidad representative, Trindell, excuse me, our Trindell representative, and I asked him to put some people in touch with us and asked him to make a proposal on the viability of landfill liability insurance, and I could not see responsibly moving in that direction. It just, there's never been a claim anywhere.
And in our response to this comment from the external auditor, we reiterated much of that investigation, so we'll have a chance to review it again next meeting.
All right, commissioners, any other comments on the on the budget. We're going to remove 2292.
I'm just thinking again about salaries and benefits.
2291.
291, excuse me.
So what is the step A, would that be for the director position? What is the amount that is on that at this time?
I was hoping I brought that in with me. If not, I can definitely include it. In fact, I'll do this based on the conversation. I will include that as an attachment to the budget as I present it to the city council and the board of supervisors. And then next, when we bring it back for the June 11th meeting, I'll also include it there as well. Those numbers were generated by the county auditor's department based on our current organizational chart and the approved positions within the agency.
It looks to me like it's about $80,000, because I know Mr. Hendricks was at, about $97,000, but which was the second highest paid employee in the county. But my confusion is that when we looked at the budget previously with all of the benefits, I thought that the employee cost was $140,000, and so that would be. So they've got in here, they've got life insurance, workers' comp, benefits. So the savings from that, I very clearly remember going over the salary, and with benefits, it was at $140,000, which was very high. And so I'm just wondering where that savings is, if we've stepped back now to, I guess, step A, you call it, and then it seems as if there should be a lot more savings in here in the salaries and benefits.
As I said, those numbers were generated by the county auditor's department, and it was included as presented by them.
So that doesn't make any sense to me, those figures there. So I don't know where they started with their step A.
Commissioner Wilson, are you asking our county auditor to review this?
Yeah, I actually think that I would like to have some clarification regarding that. I'm assuming by looking at this that the step A went back to $80,000 since he was at close to this here $98,000 payroll or salary. But then there also on a previous report we had showed all of the cost of the employee benefits, and so what I'm not seeing there is the savings in that department, like I assume there would be. So I would like some clarification, I think like Mr. Commissioner Sullivan had said in regards to the salaries and benefits.
For the board's information, if the pleasure of the board, since this is a topic of discussion, I'd be happy to email that chart to everybody, so you at least have that information.
Yeah, I think we've seen it before, it's been emailed.
Commissioner Wilson, are you asking for I want to make sure that our county auditor understands what you're asking to review, items 110 through 140 line items? Is that what you're referring to?
Yes.
Okay. Well, Ted, do we have a consensus that we would like clarification from the rest of our authority on this? That you'd like information on this? It was through.
Yeah, it seems like there'd be more savings in there.
It wouldn't hurt, but Ted said you already have a spreadsheet with this information?
Yeah, we've seen it before,
Mhm.
but it didn't, I'm not sure it had the benefits in there.
Yes, it did.
Did it? Mr.
So,
Lonsdale?
okay, Ms. Lonsdale, we're going to open up to public comment a little bit after the board finishes this, so.
This is an inquiry about the process, Mr.
All right,
Chairman.
come on up to the dais, please. please identify yourself.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, my name is Bill Lonsdale. I live in Crescent City. My inquiry about process has to do with the discussion that has just been underway. We're apparently making reference to documents which are not in the public arena, and it makes it very difficult for us in the public to understand what's being discussed. So I wonder if the documents could be made available and we can see what you all are talking about. Thank you.
In regards to the budget or the salaries?
Budget,
The budget?
the audited numbers, we have nothing
Oh, the
about the
outside.
outside auditor numbers that you've been talking about.
Right.
That was not
My
part of
concern is
it.
about the
I only
summary
got it.
discussion.
Hold on. No one is being heard because of the sound system. So please, one at a time. Thank you, Mr. Lonsdale, for coming up and asking for that clarification. Commissioner Wilson, you were saying?
Yes, exactly. I was fortunate enough to get a draft from Mr. Taylor from the outside auditor, but I wouldn't have received it in my package either.
I haven't received it yet.
Okay.
Yeah, I have not seen it. I did have a quick question, and then we can, I think, move on from where we're at, but I know there was a breakdown, is that we had additional life insurance that we provided for the previous director, and then we had regular staff life insurance that we provided as a benefit. Is there a reason we have employee life insurance and management life insurance, or are we still building a cost for a future director to have life insurance? You see where the employee and the management life insurance?
Yeah, this is item number 130,
10,033 and 10,035.
excuse me, 33 and 35, excuse me. Go ahead.
Again, these numbers were provided by the Belmar County Auditor. I don't have a specific answer to your question.
Because I don't think the standard, one of these is probably going to disappear. Because I don't think that was a standard thing that we had done. That was an exceptional deal that was put in place for the previous director.
Okay. All right, so we're at a point where we need to make some decisions on the budget, and also seeking clarification for the public's benefit on line items 110 through 140. So I will ask for the board's input on making sure we have this information made public and posted on items 110 through 140 for public availability. And then I'll ask the board to decide if they wish to delay approval of this budget at this level as we move forward, to schedule it at the next regularly scheduled Board of Authority Board meeting, which would be May 21st, if I'm not mistaken. Or do we want to move forward with it with this exception?
You know, I'm sorry to go back and beat a dead horse here, but why do we still have funds going out for, I would like to break down, I'm hoping we're not still covering life insurance on the previous directors, because that would be, he's no longer associated with the authority at this point. That should not be going out as an expense, unless it was paid in a lump sum when he was still employed. Anyway, just some clarification on that, because we should not be providing life insurance for anybody that's not employed by the authority.
And Commissioner Sullivan, just for clarification, we're talking about a $920 premium. Is that what you're
Well,
referring to?
I'm also asking about 13-14 budget, is that money's still going out to cover people on life insurance? It should not, unless we just did a lump sum premium payment, which may have been the case, I don't know. That's my question.
It's a good question. It's, as I've informed the board many times, with being one person trying to do the job of two.
Sure.
There are some things that are not happening, and one of the things I've repeatedly said is I am not up on our insurance coverage. I don't have time. I have not had time to dive into those, to look at what our coverages are, whether or not those are reasonable rates. That is not something I've had time to do.
No, that'd be on through personnel. I wouldn't expect on this particular item it just would be a question to ask.
I will do my best to get an answer to your question.
So I will ask this board, because we can go through this line by line and be here for quite some time, or we can move forward on getting this the information made public that was in question. and we can review this at the next regularly scheduled 21st meeting, or we can move on it now. So I'm going to ask for some direction from our board members on what is your option, what is your wish to do at this time. Go ahead.
I just want to say that it could be problematic to get this done in time if we don't take some action this evening. And that involves going to the city and the county. Our last city council meeting is on the 19th, which means you would push the city's approval of this off to the first week in June. And if we do that, you're really going to be pushed to meet your, what is it, June 11th?
June 11th is the day, yeah.
And I'm just, that's just as a practical matter, we may want to approve this budget overall and send it through, but I don't know.
Yeah.
If we want to meet those timelines.
Commissioner Sullivan, are you comfortable with approving this budget with that exemption and clarification to revisit at a later time, so we can conditionally approve this budget?
Well, if we can do a mid-year or after, I'm fine with if we actually do a mid-year. We haven't really had a history of doing that as an authority.
Well, certainly we can. All right.
I'm not going to, I have unanswered questions that are substantial, and I cannot do that.
Okay.
So, I vote a minimum of $41,000.
What's the June 11th is the deadline for us to have this approved and stuff. What's the penalty if it doesn't come to the board or to the council until July?
I don't know that there is one. It's in our, the revised joint powers agreement that was adopted by the city and the county, that this is to be done. We're, of course, ahead of schedule from what the city and the county regularly do, and in some ways but everybody likes it that way, because that way the county knows what to anticipate, and the city gets to engage in these questions early. So I think that would work.
And so clearly we have some cloudiness in our picture on this budget, which we need clarification on. And I think that needs to be to the satisfaction of at least two of our commissioners here until we move forward. So that having been addressed, I'll ask the board.
Well, let's see, I guess there is one thing that really is very relevant, which is that in order for us to have any approved expenses actually paid, we need to have an adopted budget, which means the budget really must be adopted before July 1st, because that is the start of our fiscal year, and without an adopted budget, we have no spending plan, we have no revenue plan. So I think that's a firm deadline.
So the second June 11th meeting, which would be, that's a Wednesday, is that correct? So June 10th is our board of supervisors meeting. And what were the dates in question again, Ted? So we have this.
Well, moving this ahead to the city council, we're looking at May 19th, and moving this to the board of supervisors, we're looking at May 27th.
Okay. And then back here, June 11th.
Back here, June 11th.
Mm-hmm.
That's correct.
And we would have the fourth Wednesday in June. Well, that's we would have to have a special meeting. We only meet once a month, so we would not be able to fulfill that deadline before July, the July meeting.
I personal preference, it'd be really nice not to have a special meeting every single month. But should that be necessary, we could potentially have, as we are doing this afternoon, a special meeting with the sole agenda item being the finalization of the budget. It's certainly possible.
Well,
And
yeah.
I could meet with Commissioner Hawley again, if you wanted to go over the figures and you could review the differences in expenses for Commissioner Sullivan. I don't know what your schedule is.
We're gonna need all of this. I think this is pretty much,
It's so hard.
we've
to
kind of
always-
honed it pretty much, except for maybe the personnel expenses and maybe some questions you have regarding the differentiation of the auditors. And I don't think it's gonna take very long in another special meeting if we have all the information for us. But I don't see any way to meet the timeline to have a budget by July 1 unless we do a special meeting of some kind.
Point taken. Yeah.
But I appreciate your offer, but I think we all probably need to hear the information at the same time.
Well, I think that's probably the only, like you said, Commissioner Hall, is just the personnel thing is, salaries and benefits was the question mark, I think.
Well, what I'll do at this point, let's let democracy take its motion right now. I'll entertain a motion at this point from any commissioner who wishes to adopt this budget in its present form and move it forward to the city and the county. I'll entertain that motion right now. Is there such a motion? Okay, there is not. So it dies for a lack of a motion. So we will have to meet again, and we'll have to clarify these things. As I'm hearing clearly that there's obfuscation, there's some questions that have yet to be answered by our commissioners, and we'll have to defer this, and I think we need to look at a date right now, so we can get the auditor on board and clarify these, get it publicly posted. And again, my apologies for, this is how it works if we can't get consensus. So we're talking about here, May the,
Hey, I only have 2 meetings next week, so.
well, I know, if we look at the week of the 19th, ouch, okay, I understand.
We already have one on the.
We have one on the 21st. Why can't we agendize this for our regularly 21st meeting? Why does it make
We're gonna miss the 19th.
Excuse me a second, so we have clear, we're here.
I'm sorry.
Okay, Ted, why can't we have this put on the agenda, as we've already discussed it, have the clarification, and be ready for the 21st?
I think that's very possible. These questions, while they are important that they be addressed, I think that it's fairly straightforward in how we can go about addressing them. So I think absolutely this can be incorporated into the meeting on the 21st.
Okay. Commissioners, are we all on board with that?
I will say with that schedule, we could consider this on Monday, the 2nd of June, and you'd still have this for your meeting on the.
Yes, I think that would work just fine.
And Monday, the 2nd of June is your first Tuesday, first Monday of the month. Supervisors meet on the 10th, and we could have that done at that time also. Your meeting, excuse me, and then your solid waste meeting would be the 11th. Our June meeting would be June 11th. Okay, so having said that, are there any other comments or questions? I'll open it up to the public right now for any other input. I think, Bill, you've already spoken on a couple of things. All right, you were going to talk on the budget because you talked about some clarification. I'll give that, and then we'll hear what you have to say and move forward.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Bill Lonsdale again. Compliments to you all for being involved in a very complex situation. 2 suggestions. One is making sure that the term difference is what we mean when we're talking about the numbers that don't match, rather than discrepancy. Early in the meeting, the word discrepancy was used several times. That has a negative connotation and doesn't help to resolve the kind of cloud of suspicion that exists concerning the district. So if we could get a clarification of that it's a difference and not a discrepancy, that would be good. The other thing is, so many of the issues that have been discussed today go back to the county auditor. If we're going to have issues and discussions that involve positions that the county auditor has taken, his office should be represented here. Thank you.
Point taken.
Mr. Chairman, I would provide a partial response. I did specifically ask that Mr. Shad be here today, and I understand he had a meeting that started at 2, and he wasn't exactly sure when that would be done. He said he would try to make it such as 5 sometime. The other thing that's important to recognize is that a lot of the differences that were being discussed today are the differences between the county auditor's fiscal system, which is on a cash basis for most of the year, and then is a modified accrual basis for 3 months out of the year, and the external auditor, which is entirely on an accrual basis. And so, because of those differences in accounting methods, not because there's any significant difference in the actual records, but because of the difference in the accounting methods, those numbers are somewhat challenging to reconcile.
All right, well, Ted, at that point, we will ask you to get that information, acquire that information, and clarify the questions that our commissioners have on these differences, not discrepancies, on these differences in the number. And at that point, we will adjourn today's meeting.